table.
Okay, good evening everyone. Can I welcome you all here this evening to our first council meeting for 2016. Can I welcome back councillors and officers as well. I'm sure we're looking forward to an exciting and challenging year. For the benefit of those who haven't been here before, our councillors this evening will decide on tonight's agenda. There will be an opportunity for the gallery to ask questions, but that'll be in item 5 during the meeting's procedure. Okay, there's no direct dialogue during the meeting, ladies and gentlemen. So if you have any questions, can I please request that you complete the question sheets provided on your seats. If you don't have one, we do have an officer who can assist you with completing that item this evening. So once again, welcome tonight. We've got a copy of the agenda. Those members of the gallery might have some. It's a book that's been left on the seats. Councillors have had this for the previous week and a bit. You will have noticed that there's a new format with the agenda. We've actually moved most of the items around a little in order to ensure that the questions are answered nice and early in piece, and the council reports and other items are therefore put towards the end of tonight's meeting. Okay, we'll now commence tonight's meeting. The membership is as listed. We have no apologies tonight. Item 3, do we have any disclosures of conflicts of interest from councillors? If there are no disclosures of conflicts, we'll move on to item 4. Confirmation of the minutes of the previous meetings. We have several there. Moved Councillor McCarthy, seconded Councillor Greco. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. Okay. We'll now move on to public question time. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do have a question, I ask you that you please complete the form, which needs to be submitted after our officer has gone to collect. But before that, Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to take up a few minutes of the council's proceedings, I do have a petition from a local community petition, and I've been advised that this is the most appropriate time to table the petition rather. I made a copy of it as per our local law, and the councillor should have a copy of that petition in front of them. The petition basically reads, we, the undersigned users of our local community park at Adams Reserve in Milton Crescent South, request that the Darebin Council take action to improve the amenities of this park, including but not limited to a barbecue facility, lighting, drinks fountain. And there's a number of signatures attached to it. I shall now table this petition. I understand the officer will prepare a report on the basis of that and to be presented to the council at the next available time slot.
Thank you. Can we have a seconder for that, please, from Councillor? Councillor McCarthy has seconded. Councillor Lee has explained the content of the petition. I'll put that to a vote to accept this item. All those in favour? That item's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll now go to item 5 of tonight's agenda, public question time. So I'm open to the gallery. If anyone has a question, could you please rise from the seat, announce who you are, your name, and just a suburb and your question. If the question is related to one of the items tonight, we may not be able to answer that. We probably have to wait until that item's up for consideration. So over to you guys. Who has a question this evening from the gallery? Gentleman from the front there, blue top there. Oki, if you can give him the microphone, please.
Mr Mayor, my name is John Epping. I live in Epping. Before I start, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to say to the councillors, this is something council officers cannot fix. It needs you people to fix this, particularly things I want to ask tonight about. It's about the re-sporting ground fees. Mr Mayor, the first question is, Mr Mayor, can you advise under this new policy why council does not discriminate between junior and senior clubs? Is this another way council can discriminate against junior clubs as they do not have the resources of senior clubs to pay these fees? And my second question, Mr Mayor, I have another 7 questions after this, so I'll sit down after this one. Mr Mayor, can you advise why schools are not charged a sporting ground fee and junior clubs are? Thank you.
Thanks for that, John. Look, in relation to sporting club fees, you know, quite a few of these have licence agreements with council in relation to how they operate, what structure they operate under, and more importantly, prescribed fees as determined by council in its annual budget. In relation to school charges, that's another operational matter which I'm happy to elaborate further on in a more detailed letter to you, Mr Nugent. And I've also been asked that we have a scheduled meeting with Mr Nugent coming up to elaborate on other items too. So have you submit that later on so we can move forward. Any other questions from the gallery? Gentleman over there, sir, Oki, blue t-shirt. Just your name, suburb and your question.
My name is Stephen Butler, I'm from Alphington. My question is regarding the approval by the Andrews government of the 6-lane Chandler Bridge. The question for council is, what do you have in place to ensure congestion is managed as part of the development of the bridge, and do you support making Grange Road a clear way?
Okay, thanks very much. If you can actually submit that question. Now, look, we were privy to this announcement last week as the announcement came that, you know, the state government has announced a 6-lane, I suppose, freeway, which will actually impact on Darebin substantially. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with the respective authorities, government departments, but more importantly, our community. I understand through the CEO will be arranging to set up a website to get community feedback so we can actually proceed further with that to ensure that the impacts are minimal. We do understand there's going to be some changes in relation to the amount of lanes which will be entering into our municipality. There's also substantial impact with the Yarra municipality as well. We'll be having dialogue with them as well to gauge the impact which the 6-lane proposal will have to Darebin, Yarra and surrounding areas as well. Any further questions? Gentleman over here, I'll get to you later, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Gerard Finnessy. I'm from Preston West. Two questions, Mr. Mayor, regarding the road at the rear of 58 Kendall Street, Preston West, which I've emailed all the councillors today. Is council aware that in contravention to General Local Laws 9.2.2 and 9.2.3 in 2011, a garage of 12.5 square metres was erected on the road between 58 Kendall Street and 9 Willow Street without a permit, and that this garage was also built over a manhole and a sewer without the required consent. I've got another question you'd like to ask, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Noting that the erection of the building is one of a number of breaches of an agreement between the owners of 9 Willow Street and Council regarding a barrier across the road, yes, which also states that my right to access the road must be maintained, and if any objections are received that the barrier be removed immediately, can Council please advise what steps are being taken to enforce the agreement and quote-unquote remove the barrier immediately, and within what time frame can I expect the road to be reopened?
Thank you for that, Gerard. Quite a few questions there, and I thank you for your email sent to councillors today as well and over the weekend. This matter has been brought to our attention in the past from a briefing from our officers. Right away, closures, sorting out issues with them is always a lengthy process, regrettably. I understand your situation is one where you're actually required to access the rear of your property and the speed of it which needs to be done. I'll ask Mr. Bueller to maybe elaborate a bit more, as it's still in the decision-making process. We actually can't do very much tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, in regard to with the right of way, we're proposing to bring a report to council at the first meeting in March to consider the status of that right of way.
Okay.
If I may add, Mr. Hennessy, yep, did receive, and I'm aware of officers talking to yourself as well. It's difficult. People have, acquired number of properties similarly, in various places. We like to, give the rights of all the people to be able to use their right-of-ways. So our building surveyors will swing into action shortly, but we will keep the councillors informed as well. As you wanted, councillors are well aware of your issue. Thank you.
At the first council meeting in March, that's what we'll be provided with options to consider. That's as quick as we can do it, I'm afraid, so just have to be patient with that one. Any further questions from the gallery? Lady over here in the white, please, Oki, in the front row. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Virginia Alfanos. I come from North Warwin. I grew up in this area, and I'm a property owner in this area, and I'm a volunteer in this area, having elderly parents that live here more frequently here than I'm at home. Look, I've come here and I'm very, very upset about something that I consider to be politically sensitive. You can hear it in my voice. I've been very distressed by the way I've been treated by one of your officers here. And the issue has been discussed. If Katrina Walsh is here, the director. Hello. Katrina has very kindly responded to a complaint made previously to the mayor. I think it was Councillor Titus at the time. Thought it was resolved, but the best has reared its ugly head. So I'm here to say, this is me, I'm Virginia. I wanted to introduce myself to my 3 Rucker ward representatives to the mayor and be letting you know that I'll be putting something in writing that I'd like a response to.
No problem, fine. As soon as we get it, we'll address it. Thanks for attending tonight, no problem. And if you can submit the actual question to the officer too, thank you. Let's try the gentleman over here, please. Oki, over here as he stood up.
My name is Alex Chapman, I'm from Northcote. Mr Mayor and fellow councillors, my question is regarding item 6.5, which is the Green Street pedestrian path. Myself and my colleagues beside me have received written advice from VicTrack, MTM and PTV, but neither of those rail authorities condone any form of public access along their railway reserves. Given this, how can Council today vote to support a recommendation in item 6.5 to expect that these rail authorities will maintain this access? And why won't Council formalise this path as a formal footpath, fenced from the railway, as was promised in a letter from Alison Breach in December and a site meeting with Philip Cargel, sorry about the pronunciation, on November the 16th. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Alex. Look, that item is up for consideration tonight. We actually can't discuss very much about it, but I do understand Councillor McCarthy.
If I can just for Mr Chapman's information, following discussions with one of our directors, Steve Hamilton, today, I've got the words in an alternative motion which I'll be putting to Council following the consideration by our officers of the request. And just a few items down into the meeting, so if Mr Chapman wants to consider it, but it does take, if successful with Council, does take Council down the path of, as per the petition, of seeking that lease arrangement with those authorities, and of course also considering the formalisation of a path as part of our budget deliberation.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy, and thanks for the residents who have actually kept us up to date in relation to their concerns. Gentleman in front there, please. Oki.
Mayor, Councillors, officers, another year. The matter of raised
Peter Thompson, I gather. Yes, it's Peter from Reservoir.
Yeah, Peter from Reservoir. Thank you.
Welcome.
This being the last term of your present council, I have a request to make of the council. That is, to take council meetings to the people. So, in other words, in open forum of work in our various wards this year, sooner than later, starting with Reservoir, in the interest of transparency and openness in good governance, just to say hello and see what the groundswell of opinion is. I trust that this will be embraced by you, since it's what you're here for and representing us, and I can only see positive results coming out of it.
Thank you very much, Peter. I gather that's a request for us to conduct our council meetings in other areas of the municipality. We've actually done that in the past. Yeah, we have done it in the past. We can consider that in relation to budget constraints as well, and advise you in writing as to where we will go with that, and based on evidence from the past as well. Thank you very much, Peter. Any further questions from the gallery? Oki, lady in the second row, please. Black top.
My name is Jane Miller from Northcote. Is the Council in a position to report to us on discussions with Melbourne Water regarding reinstatement of the avenue of trees and palms along the St George's Road shared path during the M40 pipe placement works?
Okay, thanks for that, Jane. Look, council officers and myself have actually met with representatives from Melbourne Water just before Christmas, to highlight our advocacy program in relation to the retention of the trees along St George's Road. We've actually engaged our own arborist, who has indicated, I think, 70% of the palms can be saved if Melbourne Water will consider that. There's ongoing discussions still with them. I think it's important that we also involve our local MPs in relation to this matter. It's very sensitive to the community, it's very sensitive to all of us. We obviously will know there'll be some impact when the works are commenced, but more importantly, we want to ensure that the community doesn't lose out of the infrastructure inclusion during the commencement in March, April. Mr. Deb, did you want to add something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As late as last Friday, we had meetings with the Melbourne Water and, on this matter, and so the noises are very positive, but we don't know the details yet about saving the palm trees and also other trees be replaced. But however, there is a councillor has given notice that there will be an urgent business today. I understand the councillor speaking to the mayor, bringing that matter forward. It's up to the council. So if you could wait a few minutes, there will be some discussion.
Yes, Jane. As the CEO indicated, Councillor McCarthy will be requesting council to consider it an urgent business item. If council votes to consider it, then we'll certainly hear it. Okay. Any further questions from the gallery? Gentleman in the front there, Mr. Nugent there, Oki.
Mr. Mayor, can you advise why has the council introduced charging clubs a pavilion access charge of 0.15% of the value of pavilions, that most are over $1 million. That brings the cost of, before they sit down and do anything, of $1,500 towards each club, senior and junior. Mr. Mayor, council doesn't borrow money to pay for these buildings or pavilions or extending pavilions, but council has asked clubs to make a large donation or a contribution towards the pavilion. Mr. Mayor, isn't council just double-dipping with the clubs?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Nugent. As you understand and appreciate, these are facilities and assets which the community own, and there's requirement to upkeep and maintain these facilities. There has to be some contribution from clubs. We don't discriminate between senior and junior clubs. We have actual scheduled fees, proposed fees for these respective clubs. I understand you would like that also responded to in writing. Okay. Any further questions, John?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, can you advise, wasn't it council's policy to extend social rooms and build extra change room so women and girls could complete playing school? And why are clubs being charged for it?
That's a complicated question, John. I think we do an assessment on the actual pavilions to see the requirement of what capital improvements are needed to accommodate, any, I suppose, increase in clubs' membership and participation.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll keep going. Mr. Mayor, the performance subsidy assessment criteria, isn't this just another way for council trying to run clubs?
No. Next question.
All right. Next question. Mr. Mayor, recently there was an elite competition played around Melbourne in an underage competition for cricket. Top grounds were used used in the city. The Bill Laurie Oval was used. Mr. Mayor, who will be charged for this? Cricket Victoria or the Northcote Cricket Club charged for using the ground, or do we expect the children to pay?
Off the top of my head, John, I'm not familiar in relation to. It's an operational matter. It'll be done according through the officers. Do you have more questions, John? Because I'd rather you just submit them. We can address them all at once when we meet. I think it'll be easier, more practical, and in light of our local law saying there's only 2 questions we're allowed. No, John, I think we'll leave it. I think we only allow 2 questions. One more we'll allow.
Access to public toilets at sporting grounds was to start in September 2015, then delayed to November 2015. Mr. Mayor, could you please advise, have public toilets been open at these sporting grounds to the public?
Mr. Depp, I think we have a contractor which arranges the opening of toilets and access.
Yes, we will provide that in writing, because some of them are in a bad condition. They don't open, otherwise are open, but we'll give you in writing.
Thanks, John. Okay. Are there any further questions from the gallery? Yes, lady in the middle there, please, Oki.
Hi, Rebecca Milnes, Northcote. I'm here in relation to solution 6.5, which is an agenda item for today. The solution as tabled indicates that PTV has changed their mind and will grant access to the land. However, correspondence from the Transport Minister indicates otherwise. How does the recommended solution provide certainty for the community this week, this month and for the next 25 years?
We'll have to answer that when the item's up for consideration. I can't respond on behalf of Council at this stage as it hasn't been discussed or debated. So just please stay for the debate, okay? Are there any further questions from the gallery? If not, those who have asked questions, can you please submit them to Oki so we can have a record of what's been submitted, please, okay? All right, that concludes public question time. Please stay for the duration of the meeting or leave at your own leisure at the conclusion of your item, okay? We now go on to consideration of reports. Councillor McCarthy.
Mr Mayor, if I can move a suspension of standing orders to hear an urgent item.
Do we have a seconder? Yes. Councillor Lee. Councillor McCarthy. I beg your pardon. We've got a notice to suspend standing orders. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Okay, we now suspend standing orders to hear...
I then move that the item is circulated to councillors as an urgent item be admitted.
Sorry, Trent, I've made an error. I've got a vote to accept that item. Councillor McCarthy has lodged an urgent item for business. Can I request councillors to accept that?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Moved, Councillor Lee, accepted, seconded, Councillor Greco. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Bit rusty. Holidays. Now, Councillor McCarthy, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'll just read out the item. Councillors do have it, but just for clarity. The motion is that 1, Council notes the independent advice provided to Council, the Minister for Water and the Member for Northcote by an expert in the steel pipeline field in relation to Melbourne Water's M40 project. 2, Council urgently requests a roundtable meeting with Melbourne Water to consider this advice in relation to council and community advocacy for the retention and reinstatement of a treed avenue along the St George's Road median. This meeting should include councillors and council officers, representatives from Melbourne Water, representatives from the Protect St George's Road Landscape Group and other relevant stakeholders. This meeting should be held before Melbourne Water proceeds with the tender process for detailed design and construction of the M40 project in March.
Happy to second that. Seconded, Councillor Walsh.
Mayor, I have an amendment that I wish to...
Let's hear it, so the mover and seconder can consider it.
Yep. A 3, because point 2 is couched in, I suppose, a polite invitation, but I wish to also include a 3, which looks at exploring a trigger mechanism by exploring, through officers' advice, the approach that may potentially be available to Council through Section 9 of the Local Government Act, which talks about dispute resolution mechanisms.
Can we hear point 3 then? Can we actually hear what point 3, how it will read?
Yeah. The outline is, if Melbourne Water declines a Council's invitation, then Council should explore the option of triggering a Section 9 application under the Local Government Act to the Governing Council to consider, and the approach of, and I quote, the commissioning of a board of inquiry.
Thank you. Is the mover happy with that?
Very happy to accept that.
That's been accepted. Okay, thank you.
I'll accept that as well.
Okay, Councillor McCarthy.
Just very quickly, and thank you, Councillor Cetus, and I think it's important to be clear and be serious with Melbourne Water about how important it is for us to see that reinstatement of an avenue of trees along the corridor of St George's Road, not just a few palm trees here or there, or a single lane as has been proposed in various discussions. Critically here, while there has been some movement as communicated by our CEO in relation to Melbourne Water's position, we're still quite a distance apart from Council and the community's desire to see a like-for-like replacement of the great green corridor that we have. And obviously with some improvements to the safety along that corridor for pedestrians, cyclists and other road users. But importantly, we need to maintain a strong advocacy position now because Melbourne Water has advised that they intend to undergo the detailed design and development process in March. That's literally a month away, and critically, the specifications in that tender process will determine the outcome that we see on St George's Road, not just for the next couple of years, but for potentially decades to come, because this is a major project. It is going to be highly disruptive. There hasn't been the community consultation process which Melbourne Water had flagged, and presumably that's got something to do with the strong community sentiment, and I suppose Melbourne Water wanting to find out how to deal with that. Well, we're trying to give them a way forward and a way through this, which is to bring all the stakeholders to the table, our experts, our officers, the community who are highly engaged and passionate and have a great deal of expertise in this, and many of whom, including residents here tonight, were involved in the original plantings. So they should be at the table, and I think Councillor Seavis's extra point is critical in saying that we will keep going on this path until we see a commitment to a like-for-like replacement in terms of a green avenue and a significant landscape. I should also note, and it is included there in the motion, that there has been expert advice received by an independent expert who has very specific expertise in the area of the steel pipe replacement process, and that advice, which councillors have received via email, has also gone to the Minister for Water and the Member for Northcote, and presumably has made its way to Melbourne Water as well. So we've all got the same information, let's all get on the same page and let's work out how we proceed, because the project from Melbourne Water's perspective has to happen in terms of providing that water provision to Melbourne, but we also want to make sure that the amenity outcome for our city is better, not worse. And I think we can do that with the right level of will, as typified by both the motion as read and also the additional point by Councillor Seavis. So I appreciate the contribution and particularly the ongoing effort. And I should note as well that I think it's now over around 2,500 signatures on the online petition that's been distributed to residents, and of course also a written petition which I believe has several hundred or more signatures to that as well. So there is a lot of community interest in this, not just in the St George's Road section, but in fact well beyond that. And we have a responsibility to our residents, but everyone that uses St George's Road, to get this right and to keep fighting as hard as we can with Melbourne Water to get that outcome that we obviously have committed to, which is the retention of a significant green avenue along that corridor.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Wash.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. The first point I'll raise is to advise Council that I will be seeking to table a petition which is being finalised at the moment. I will be hoping to table that at the time of reports. But I second this because Councillor McCarthy is right. There's been some movement from Melbourne Water, and that's important. But there's still a distance. But Council has been clear on its view on this matter. We've passed a resolution which was passed by the whole Council unanimously, and that we believe that the trees should be retained and replaced as part of these works, and which is why it's important that we support this motion tonight, and because I feel like we've done the advocacy, but it's but the fact is it's time that the Minister and Melbourne Water come to the table on this matter, so that we can protect this this important community asset. And this, the experts all admit that, and our own arborist has admitted that this can be done. Yet Melbourne Water seems to be hiding behind this facade of saying it can't happen.
Thanks, Councillor Walsh. Okay, Councillor Seavis, do you wish to contribute to the debate?
Just to add to the impetus behind point number 3, as it's now stands as part of the overall resolution. This is probably the first opportunity that we will probably have to have a look at this, but I note that its application could have wide-reaching effects subject to Section 9, Subsection 5 of that part of the Act. Our approach in terms of making a referral of our complaint to the Governor and Council is subject to any dispute resolution mechanism that exists in any other Act which regulates any other public body, which includes municipal councils and also, of course, other governing instrumentalities like Melbourne Water, potentially Vic Roads, Vic Track. Its application can be quite extensive, so we need to do some homework because we are not allowed to just make an application willy-nilly by triggering a Section 9 approach. So this is a groundbreaking area for us because if in the event, for instance, no Act and no regulation provides a dispute resolution mechanism with those particular stakeholders, we have a unique opportunity in which to use a very little known provision of the Local Government Act, and that is the triggering of a Board of Inquiry through our petition to the Governor and Council. What's interesting in terms of its remit is the potential that if in the event, for instance, it's accepted, that the Board of Inquiry in its determination, so it has the power to make determinations, not just hear the disputes, is also able to bind the parties who've joined in that process. So if you were to have a look down the line in terms of our agenda this evening, Councillor, 6.5 potentially is another avenue in which, for instance, we could probably break through the logjam with respect to our problems with VicTrack and, of course, their inconsistency of approach, I might add, without preempting the debate on 6.5, Mr Mayor, in terms of the treatments leading towards Westgarth Station, which was a cooperative between Council
Thanks,
and
Councillor Seeders.
So you look at that cooperative approach, it may well be that under an equity situation, which then I'll finish there, I know I'm a little bit over, may require a joint contribution. I think that's where we're probably heading with this.
Thanks, Councillor Seeders.
Whatever acts exist.
Councillor Lawrence?
Just a question, Mr Mayor, through you. Obviously some ward councils are very close to this issue, but you did mention before our own expert opinion about a possible loss of 30% of trees or possible retention of 30% of 70% of trees. Just in terms of the council-wide impact of this, what's the likely contributions that's going to be sought from the council budget? I mean, of course, our urban forest strategy and our other budgets for greening in any of these scenarios in terms of loss of trees?
Good question, Councillor Lawrence. Mr Dev?
That's a very good question. It's up to the council, but it's groundbreaking, all right, because in my 25 years of experience, Board of Inquiry has not been requested by a council in this manner. The issue is, I'll come to that in a moment. The dispute resolution itself, dispute is the core, the definition of dispute. I think Local Government Act provides for the council to take into consideration the community's interest and community well-being. So it's an indirect requirement, even though that particular area belongs to Melbourne Water and the minister can override sometimes. And the question about, I think, it's in the past council has invested a lot of money into that area. It's not government state government did that. So in the future, that's why we are having this fight with the Melbourne Water for them to reinstall to our requirement, so that council need not to do that initial capital injection, but it's council will decide at that moment.
Okay, thanks, Mr Dev. I think we've had a fair bit of discussion in relation to this matter now. I'll now put that item to vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously.
Yeah,
thanks very much for that. Have that noted, Councillor Walsh, that's unanimous. So the committee can now know that we're not taking this lying down. Councillor Seeders has moved to resume standing orders. A second to Councillor Lee. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Resumption of standing orders will take place now. Now we'll go to consideration of reports. Please stay for the rest of the items if you wish to, ladies and gentlemen, or leave at your own leisure. 6.1, the formalisation of agreement for flood mitigation and water harvesting project at John Cain Memorial Park, Thornbury. Do we have a mover there, please?
I'll move, Mr Mayor.
Move, Councillor Seeders. Seconder?
I'll second
Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Seeders.
I'll keep this brief. I think everyone knows the sorry saga in relation to this particular story, but these things do take time, and of course, because of the arrangements, I suppose, transcend the cities of Northcote and the creation of the city of Darebin. It's a legacy issue from pre-amalgamation. That being said, the opportunity also arises in terms of the co-contributions associated with this significant infrastructure proposal to also talk about sustainability at John Cain in terms of the potential harvesting of water, which is another key consideration that's been presented to Council at earlier briefings that I suppose presents a bit of an upside in terms of the reticulation sporting grounds that are down at John Cain. You'd hope that over time the crossover between different stakeholders would get better. This is not exactly what you might call an exemplar in that process, but it may well be that we do still have some legacy considerations in other parts of the city. I'm just thankful that this is here before us tonight, and in order for us to actually put it to bed. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Seeders. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. What we're dealing with in this region obviously is not simply flooding issues, actually stormwater area, which affects us there and also other parts of Fairfield and also further up in Preston. So this has come up before with Council. It's been quite pricey in terms of looking at mitigation there, and obviously we've got other plans for bigger and better projects around there. So given that we are looking at some extra money here, in local government, we rarely get dollar for dollar funding anymore. We're lucky if we get, $1 for us spending $4 on many projects. It is important that we actually address this, and obviously there are other parts of the city we know that still require work too.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any further comments, Councillor Walsh?
Yeah, it's I certainly think it's worth noting this funding, and I obviously welcome this funding. The quick point that I will make, Mr. Mayor, is it's great that the government are funding this, but it's also time for the state government to fund something else there, which is our multi-purpose sports stadium. So it's time they also phones up and come to the party on that too.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. If there's no further debate, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Next line of consideration is 6.2, the Northern Region Trail Strategy, involving 7 councils. Move Councillor Greco, second Councillor Walsh. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to speak in relation to this particular item and
Councillor McCarthy.
explain a little bit of its background. This item here is about developing a Northern Region trail strategy. It's actually been developed by 7 councils. It's been a long time coming. The work started back in 2013, and I understand that previous mayors have been involved with this in relation to working with other mayors of our adjoining councils in terms of developing this strategy. Why this strategy is important, Mr. Mayor, is that one, it is a collaborative effort, and secondly, it's also an integrated approach to extending the trail network that crisscrosses our city, particularly from a north-south perspective. And so the councils have worked very closely together to put forward a strategy and have documented that strategy. In the strategy, it talks about 121 individual projects spanning 780 kilometres of trails. That's the vision. Obviously, we're not going to achieve that immediately, but what this strategy does is actually documents that in a very articulated manner, and also in a manner that actually works well with our other councils, with our neighbouring councils, because the magic of what's been proposed here is the integrated approach. Also, what's important to note about this is that these types of projects, there are particular projects that are a priority for Darebin, and they're listed there on page 10. And what's really interesting about this is that the projects that are listed there on page 10, which are a priority for our city, for the city of Darebin, are mainly in the northern part of the city. We're quite familiar in Darebin there've been a lot of walking trails in the southern part of the city, but we don't have as many in the northern part of the city. So this strategy has actually helped to develop those. And finally, I'd like to say, Mr. Mayor, that this strategy is very important because it provides us an advocacy document to seek funding from the state government in relation to realising these new trails. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor McCarthy, a seconder.
Look, just very briefly, Councillor Greco has covered it very well. I just wanted to emphasise the importance of the regional approach that we're taking here, because we work at a regional level in relation to our climate action, in relation to our community services, our transport, and in this case it's really our active transport and the opportunities that people have to get around, not in the car, but in other ways. And this work, and I remember the earlier incarnation of this work coming to us, we have been fighting on a whole range of fronts over many years to improve the non-traditional means around getting between our city and other cities, and obviously the big battle at the other end of the Darebin Creek to get the completion of the Darebin Creek Trail across to the other side of Heidelberg Road and into the city of Boroondara has been a big fight, still ongoing in terms of various parts of that. But here we have, I think it's really important from a city perspective, a great opportunity to improve at the northern parts of our city those connections. And you'd be surprised how many people who live in the southern parts of Darebin and even to our south love to actually make that journey to the north. The Mary Creek Trail, we've had some good investments, some good improvement there, but we haven't always had the same improvements in the corner pocket here that we're talking about with La Trobe University and of course the Darebin Creek section as well. So it's very closely aligned with our policies around not just our engagement with the environment, but also our active transport opportunities as well. And I think that it would be great for Council to really get behind this initiative. There are, and I just will add, other projects which are part of our priorities in relation to, and potential priorities in relation to connections between ours and other cities, and these are the off-road connections, but they don't figure in this report, even though they are priorities for us, because we already have significant work underway in those areas. And so I just would like to make the point that even though we've got 3 listed here, that's not the extent of the work, because we are doing everything we can to the south, east and west to build those connections. And of course the big community campaign across the Mary Creek Bridge is another thing that will come up for Council's consideration at some stage too, but it's not quite at the stage to put it on this list.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Any further comments from councillors? Councillor Walsh.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to also talk about the Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Greco have covered most of it, and I thank Councillor McCarthy for noting and keeping on the agenda the importance of other projects which we're advocating for, and which Council can hopefully be part of building, is the for example the Mary Creek footbridge. Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Greco have both mentioned the importance of this as an integrated approach, and as Councillor Greco mentioned on page 10 of the report, it discusses our priorities. But as I look through that priority list, I also note that how important it is that we support other councils. For example, the yellow priority of the Rush Hall extension is going to be very important, and it will greatly benefits residents in my ward, which I represent with Councillor Cedars and Councillor McCarthy, in streets such as McLaughlin Street, Rucker Street, and McWilliam Street in Northcote. So, and also along that whole Westgarth Street street corridor, which abuts Rushall, which eventually abuts Rushall Station and the Mary Parade with the Mary Creek.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Before I put that to a vote, I'll just mention to councillors that the other 6 councillors involved in this project will also be endorsing this item at their council meetings. I'll put that to a vote now. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item of consideration is 6.3, the outcome of the statutory leasing procedures for our neighbourhood houses. Move Councillor Villala, second Councillor Lee. Councillor Villala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation regarding council's leases with the neighbourhood houses. The recommendation is basically to execute the leases because once the statutory processes have been concluded, that is the actual negotiations, the recommendation before us tonight is to actually sign off on the leases. As the report indicates, Mr. Mayor, Council has proposed leases with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 neighbourhood houses, and I think it's fair to say that the neighbourhood houses, our partnership with them is very critical to a lot of the work that we do. The neighbourhood houses are underpinned by a very important council strategy, and that is to promote a healthy and connected community and community services. Neighbourhood houses, I think, are a really good investment for ratepayers' money, in that they operate at the grassroots level. They are very much in touch with the needs of the community, and also, and dare I say, Mr. Mayor, are probably the most efficiently run service providers in our community, because they are able to stretch that dollar in ways that a lot of other organisations find challenging. So I commend the work that the officers have done to fine-tune the leasing arrangements. I also want to note, Mr. Mayor, that the officers also provide a lot of, in addition to funding, by providing land and helping with admin costs and staffing costs, they also provide a lot of support in governance structures, so that the governance in the organisations are operating at an expected high standard, and I think that requires a lot of time and effort on part of the officers, and I'd like to acknowledge that. I also like to acknowledge, Mr. Mayor, that in the next coming months, we'll be looking at the budget, and I think we're going to have to ask ourselves how much with rate capping and all those other issues that are coming in, maybe this idea of partnerships, I think, is something that we really have to strengthen. And organisations like neighbourhood houses would obviously, I hope, come into that conversation, because they really do provide just great opportunities to ensure that the services that have become a community expectation are maintained and maybe even improved upon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Villala. Councillor Lee, anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As Councillor Villala just mentioned, these neighbourhood houses provide a range of services to our most vulnerable members of our community. I've had the pleasure of visiting quite a number of those. I think the ones that I haven't visited are, I think, in Alphington. I think all the others have had a chance to visit one or the other. And what I noticed is a group of very dedicated volunteers, and they provide a range of programs for people with disabilities, right through to women in crisis, as well as newly arrivals from overseas and also interstate, want to integrate into our community. So I think it's important that the council support these neighbourhood houses the best of its ability. Insofar as the financial input is concerned, we note on page 19 of the report that we're charging these neighbourhood houses at $52 per annum, so $1 a week. I think that's an entirely reasonable given amount of social dividend that these neighbourhood houses generate to our community. I also like to commend the work of our officers, following from Councillor Villala's speech just now, in terms of assisting the merger between the Thornbury Women's Neighbourhood House and the Preston Neighbourhood House. I know there has been some issues there, which both neighbourhood houses are finding that it's actually easier to merge in terms of achieving the best economies of scale in terms of the operation and administration. So our thanks to officers on their diligent work on those two neighbourhood houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Greco, anything further to add?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, all I'd like to add, and I fully endorse what Councillor Lee and Councillor Villala have said, and I think that neighbourhood houses really give the word community meeting. But what I'd like to point out from a funding perspective, I think it's important that we note this. On page 17 of the report, it says that neighbourhood houses have been traditionally funded and supported by the state government and now being partially funded by councils. Why I note that, Mr Mayor, is that in light of rate capping, this is a classic cost-shifting exercise that's occurred. Now, I'm not advocating that we don't fund neighbourhood houses, far from it. I'm a great advocate of neighbourhood houses, and I think we should actually support them even more. But I just want to note that because what that means, and I think we should start thinking about, is how some of the programs that are run in neighbourhood houses can be better supported by state government funding. We provide a lot of the infrastructure, the actual, do most of the maintenance, but it would be good to actually start knocking on government doors and say, cough up all the money in relation to the programs that are run at neighbourhood houses.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor McCarthy.
Look, I just have a very quick question. It's just arisen from something Councillor Greco has raised, if I may, through you, Mr Mayor. With our funding agreement, which we have attached as an appendix, whether we actually apply the CPI or any other incremental increase in our funding to neighbourhood houses, or whether it's a flat payment structure.
Mr Mayor, could I refer it to Ms Knox?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The funding for the houses comes to council as part of the budget process, so it's your decision as to what the amount towards the houses is on an annual basis.
So in that case, can I propose to the mover and seconder a fourth point, which is receives a further report in time for the 2016-17 budget process regarding the current funding arrangements for neighbourhood houses and the potential to look at a CPI-based increase per annum.
Councillor Villar.
Yes, happy with that, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so if you can submit that to the minute taker, please, Councillor McCarthy. Okay, we've had sufficient debate on that. I might put that to a vote. All those in favour on that item? That's carried. Next item of consideration is 6.4, the proposed right-of-way discontinuance adjoining 12 and 14 Inverness Street Reservoir. We have a recommendation there. Councillor, want to move that? Okay, take us. 6.4. Councillor Walsh has moved. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Walsh has moved. Seconder?
For the second of that.
Thank you, Councillor Sedas. Move, Councillor Walsh. Second, Councillor Sedas. Councillor Walsh, do you wish to speak to it?
No, I wasn't planning on moving this, but in luck of the move, I was happy to move it.
Okay. Councillor Sedas? Nothing. Any comments from councillors? If there's no comments or questions, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That motion is lost. We have an alternative recommendation then.
Can I ask a procedural question, if I may, Mr Mayor?
Please do, Councillor McCarthy.
In the absence of an alternative, what will happen with this item?
Mr Milborg.
I believe an item that is, I believe an item which is not voted lapses.
Lapses, and councillors said to come back to a council in some other form, because there's a process which we have gone through with the community, and council have obligation to make some decision at some point of time.
Councillor Villar.
Just a comment, I suppose, Mr Mayor. I would reluctant to put forward an alternative recommendation
So you're asking to defer the item to the next
just to defer, and so, I'm happy to accept the vote, but I'm saying I would like to consider a response and an appropriate alternative, appropriate motion at another meeting once I've got some information around some questions that I'll have. But I'm happy with the vote. But I'm saying I don't want to be hasty in relation to an alternative motion.
Councillor Lee.
In light of the vote just taken, I'd like to propose a deferral motion. A deferral motion for council to be given a briefing on the three options as outlined on page 24 of the report.
On a point of order, given that the vote has already taken, I think the opportunity has been lost.
You can't defer, Councillor.
So the advice
I'm just getting some advice. We actually can't defer it. We've actually got to bring it back to the next meeting that's currently too late.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So,
if I'm correct, the word referred, you can actually refer a matter to come back to council rather than deferring it. We've made a decision, but you'd like to come the matter to come back to.
Well, is that correct? Just on that, Mr. Mayor, just another point. Mr. Deb's earlier advice suggested it would be coming back in a different form. I don't think, therefore, it follows perhaps in that logic that we need to make an intervention at all. It'll come back in whatever report fashion. I'm not sure what, but presumably in the first instance it'll come to a briefing session before it comes.
Yes, I think.
Thank you, councillors. I might get some advice from Mr. Hamilton in relation to timing matters for this item. Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess just a question for my manager and the timing of the adverse possession claim that's in play. Are there any deferral impact on that process?
Chris.
I'm not aware of the timing in regard to the adverse possession claim. It is currently with the Titles Office, and they have been taking some time, and sometimes it's weeks and sometimes it's months in order to process those. So it is difficult to say whether or not time is a relevant issue in regard to this matter. However, given that the item has lapsed, I believe we would come back to Brendan and then come back to council as a matter of course without needing a deferral.
Okay, so the item has lapsed. It will come to the next council meeting in its current form. Okay. No need to vote on that then. That's dealt with.
Okay, that sounds good.
Next item, 6.5, the Green Street pedestrian path. Councillor McCarthy.
Proposed an alternative motion to the recommendation.
Can we hear it? Can we hear it first?
I believe that council officers have it to project on screen, so I don't have my paper copy with me at the moment. So
yeah, we just wait for the officer to bring that up, please. Alternative motion from Councillor McCarthy for item 6.5.
Happy to second it.
Okay. Happy to second Councillor Walsh.
Mr. Mayor, I might ask the indulgence of the mover and seconder whether they might consider a point 4 to be added, and I'll read it. The council explore whether petitioning for a board of inquiry being established to the Governor and Council under Section 9 of the Local Government Act, if there is no similar dispute resolution mechanism available under the Act which regulates VicTrack.
Thank you, Councillor Sears. Councillor McCarthy.
Could we hear the words again? Sorry, I'm missing part of that, just to be really clear.
The council explore whether the petitioning for a board of inquiry being established to the Governor and Council under Section 9 of the Local Government Act, if there is no similar dispute resolution mechanism available under the Act which regulates VicTrack.
Happy to accept that. That's
yeah, accept it. Okay, Councillor McCarthy, can you speak to you're getting alternative motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know it's a bit hard to read, but just to be clear for councillors, point 1 is that we are advocating for continued access to this section of land. If councillors aren't aware, it is a section of land at the end of Green Street in Northcote, which has been used as an informal path by residents in that street and surrounding streets to get to Dennis Station and surrounds. Last year there were signs placed up which essentially ordered that anyone who tried to enter would be trespassing, and effectively denied the community access to what has been a much loved and well used informal path for a long time. So point 1 is just that we are continuing to advocate in line with the community wish that they want to continue to have this access. The critical difference between the motion before you and the recommendation in the report arises from the advice and information that we've actually received from residents who have received correspondence from the Minister for Transport, which is contrary to the information that we have in this report. I've discussed this matter with our Director, Steve Hamilton, regarding the issues and how we move past this, because on the one hand, the Public Transport Victoria is saying that access is not allowed and that council has the option of leasing this space and constructing a path. On the other hand, the other agencies, being VicTrack and MTM, have said they don't have a problem. And we don't have anything in writing from them yet, so we have to work on the basis of what can we do immediately. Point 2 is essentially to try to move this situation forward in line with the Minister's recommendation, which is to seek Council to be able to lease this land at no cost, ideally, to Council. There is no reason for us to be charged for the use of this land. It currently has been used, and for a long time has been used informally by the community, so why should the community have to pay twice? The second part of point 2 is also asking those agencies to consider contributing alongside Council to the construction of a path, which would be an asset on their land and of course would improve and enhance access to the station, which of course we'd hope would also be in their interests. The third point essentially provides a trigger for Council to be able to consider this matter formally in its budget process. We have received a petition from many residents and it came together very quickly, seeking Council to consider this as part of the budget process, but obviously we need to test the water with these agencies to see whether they'd be willing to co-contribute to this path construction as well. As I said before, this has a lot of community interest, and as Councillor Seevers has pointed out, there is another mechanism there if we don't get our way with the relevant authorities. But by all means, I'm proposing with point 2 that we make that initial approach to those agencies to say, here's the advice we've got, and while it's contradictory to what you've told us, we would like to consider leasing this land at no cost and see where that will go. Obviously, this will trigger a response from those agencies, Mr Mayor, and allows us to consider that next stage if we need to.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Walsh, a second, do you wish to add anything to that?
Yeah, just very quickly. It is important to that we do pass this because as Councillor McCarthy has said, the report is contrary to the latest advice that Council has, and some are concerned about VicTrac's motives here, which is which is certainly concerning. First of all, can I acknowledge and thank the local residents who are here tonight, and thank them for their hard work on this matter, because we do need to because Council needs to come to the table with this, which we are doing, and we may have to look at budgetary outcomes as well. Also, can I note Councillor Seedis's point 4, which is strong and bold, but most importantly, it sends a very clear and unequivocal message that Council is serious about this, and we're prepared to go to five jackets on if needs be.
Thanks, Councillor Walsh. Councillor Seedis.
Mr Mayor, just to speak briefly on the point 4, and again, just in reference to the suspension of standing orders, which heard Councillor McCarthy's urgent business item with respect to the trees on St George's Road. The potential application of us triggering a Section 9 approach is infinite in terms of the amount of stakeholders that we have to negotiate. We saw with Melbourne Water with respect to St George's Road, but here with VicTrac. But in this instance, it's not in dealing with this disposition of land which is deemed to be surplus. Here we're talking about access which has been available to residents for years. I, for one, having lived in Jessie Street for, God knows, I think it was over 15 years before I got married, know that it's not just Green Street, it is Jessie Street and Edward Street, by the by, that accesses through Farnham Court and at the end of Green Street, that particular trail leading to the city-bound section of Dennis Station. I find it a bit interesting that given that there had been a previous relationship between VicTrac and Darebin Council to put at least a gravel path towards West Scar Station, that they wouldn't have considered a similar treatment going the other way. So I find that a bit strange. But if we draw attention, Mr Mayor, to the point 2 that was originally incorporated within there, it talks about the co-contribution arrangements between council and VicTrack. So we're not asking for a free ride or free passage in this instance. And a similar point I would have made with respect to St George Road, that with respect to reinstatement or preservation of any trees along that side, I'm sure, just with previous custom and practice, any co-contribution between us and Melbourne Water would be at the crux of any resolution that would come out of it. But the point here is that we're exhausting all possible avenues before relying on Section 9, or indeed any other provision that may be available to us in terms of our approach with VicTrack in this instance. So I think that's the trick for us anyway, Mr Mayor, but I like the idea of this innovation with Section 9, but we need to establish that there is no alternative mechanism available, and if that is the case, after we've exhausted point number 2,
thanks, Councillor Sears,
then let's go for Section 9.
Okay, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried.
That noted as unanimous, please.
We'll note that as unanimous. Minute take over there.
Now I'll move the next motion.
Next item is 6.6, fencing of the Trobe Wildlife Sanctuary. Move Councillor Greco. Second Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This motion is in regards to the fencing at the Trobe Wildlife Sanctuary. It's come to council as a result of a petition which was tabled here at council back on the 7th of December. I'd also like to acknowledge the residents that are here tonight and to see the outcome of the council report in relation to the petition. Just as some very quick background in regards to this, and I'll be moving an alternate motion which I hope will come up on the board, which I've circulated previously. Just as background in relation to this, it's a long ongoing issue between the residents and the Trobe University about a fence which has been erected, which affects the neighbourhood feel, the aesthetics of the area, and lots of other issues associated with this fence. And the residents have been trying to talk to the Trobe University about this, and the Trobe University claims that they have consulted with the residents, but the residents point out to me that it was basically a sham consultation with the residents, and that the residents would like the Trobe University to sit down with them and explore other options associated with that construction of that fence. So as you can see, the residents over time have been very frustrated in not being able to put their views across as they would normally be able to. When residents talk to councils, councils never right on a lot of things, but at least something that we do well is that we consult with the community and give the community an opportunity to have their say. It appears that in this case, that the community and local residents have not had an opportunity to sit down with La Trobe University and actually thrash out what the other options are in regards to this fence. So there's been a lot of frustration and a lot of toing and froing. What I'm suggesting in the alternate motion, which I hope that will come up, but if it doesn't come up, I'll read it out. And it's basically changing point B in the recommendation to and replacing point B with the following words: that the Mayor writes to La Trobe University with a view to facilitate a meeting of key stakeholders, including local residents, on the issue. And the reason I've put that alternate motion is that the way the recommendation reads at the moment in the report, it doesn't actually create a situation where the Trobe will actually talk to its residents. And by putting these words forward, it will actually encourage the Trobe University to be part of a meeting. Now, we know that council, this is not strictly a council issue per se, but I think council can play a role of a mediator or facilitator in bringing the various parties together across the table to try and thrash out some of the issues. I think we have that role in terms of playing the role of advocates for our community, and I hope that councillors will endorse the alternate motion.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. I understand that point B has been amended, Councillor Greco. We have circulated to councillors today, and we have seen it. And
there it goes. It appears up
there now on the screen. And Councillor Lawrence, a seconder.
I've got an amendment.
Yeah, well, you're seconder, so it's your turn to speak now. So let's hear the amendment.
I've got an amendment which would be a section D, along similar lines to what we've heard previously from Councillor Cetus, that if this community consultation is unsuccessful, that council explore dispute resolution via Section 9 of the Local Government Act.
Move ahead with that? Okay. So point D has been now suggested by Councillor Lawrence. We've seen it twice again tonight. So
three times.
Third time tonight.
Okay.
Becoming very familiar with it now.
So, councillors, why this has been presented previously as a bit like a recent dispute over a beachside view that went to court and cost $600,000, and the people who put the fence blocking the view lost the case. But of course, the poor residents spent $600,000 getting their view back. And it isn't actually, because this suburb was laid out in 1996-98 by the early Darebin Council in consultation with the developer for specific purposes in terms of tree protection and integration with the urban forest that's within the La Trobe University, and integration with the Cresswell Forest behind, and of course the integration of Cresswell Hill, which is part of the development at the top. So the vision was very clearly there, and the council is a stakeholder, because the council is a stakeholder in urban town planning in that area, and in terms of environmental planning for that area, going back to the formation of this council in '96. So I'd be interested to see whether we could explore, as the town planning authority in that area, what has been a very poor outcome in terms of this ugly wall and this lack of consultation, because it is one ecosystem running through that whole area, and that was how it was planned, and this breaks that. And I would have to say there'd be a lot of species actually obstructed in terms of insects and others that are essential for pollination, obstructed by this structure. It's more to go around a rubbish dump or industrial factory site. It's not something to go around an environmental area.
Thanks, Councillor Lawrence. I might get some comment from the CEO in relation to that fourth point, its validity. CEO?
The verbs there is for council to explore it. So.
Yeah, I know, Mr. Mayor, that I would suggest this to be changed to, if it is the intention of the council, to explore the ways of dispute resolution, because Section 9 is specific to two statutory bodies under the state government, very clearly. So the La Trobe comes under the federal government.
Okay, so dispute resolution without Section 9, and again, that may still exist for council to explore.
As long as it doesn't cost us a lot.
Instead of the point D.
No. Point D is amended, changed completely.
So E is an alternate D.
Yeah, so can you erase that D? If that's right.
Can you just make it, join it and put and or, councils for other options?
Okay. Councillors happy with that?
Yeah. Okay.
We've heard enough debate, mate, so I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried.
Noted that as unanimous.
That's been unanimous, Ms. Taker. Next item of consideration is 6.7, the 2016 election period policy. We have a recommendation there. Councillor McCarthy moves. Councillor Williams seconds. Councillor McCarthy.
Just very quickly, as councillors would be aware, council is required by March this year to adopt an election period policy, which provides for essentially the guarantee to both the community, to anyone involved in the council elections and all public authorities and the public more generally, about the integrity of both the council process and the integrity and transparency of councillors during that process. And by virtue of that, the policy itself, as councillors would have read, stipulates two periods, being the pre-election period and the election period, whereupon there are a range of restrictions that we as councillors place upon ourselves, and of course the organisation. This policy has been developed by officers based on the best practice, but also in line with the new reforms within the Local Government Act and that space at the moment as well, to ensure that councillors are not using council facilities, resources, information and so on and so forth inappropriately, and certainly not as part of election campaigns or re-election campaigns for themselves or others. So it's important for us to have a policy in place. It's also important that the policy reflects best practice in local government, and I believe, based on what we have in front of us here, that it does. It has been obviously worked on significantly by officers, and of course has been measured up against the latest changes, as I mentioned, in the Local Government Act. I won't go into detail in terms of what the policy includes, other than it stipulates very clearly the penalties that are included and would take effect for both councillors, council officers and others, including members of council committees, if they were to infringe elements of this policy and the provisions under the Local Government Act as well. So it's good that we're actually adopting this now, hopefully, because we need to do it by March, and it gets that policy in place and a clear signal to the community about the integrity through which this organisation will conduct its elections in October this year. I'll leave it there, Mr Mayor. It's not a great more to add, other than I endorse what the policy says and does.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Williams, anything to add?
Just that saying that 2 months leading up to it, that we must ensure that we have the highest standard of good governance and that the elections are conducted in an environment that is open to and fair to all candidates. So it's really important that we ensure that those best practice is achieved in that transparency and independence, that not only it's just councillors but council staff too, that it actually stipulates that no council staff to use council equipment or resources to during or pre-election period. So under those circumstances, I think that's important that we highlight that we keep for good governance.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. There's no further comment. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried.
Can we have that noted as unanimous, please?
So let's note that unanimous again. Next item of consideration is 6.8, the Council and Staff Interaction Protocol. Move Councillor Lee. Second Councillor Vella. Councillor Lee.
Look, it's a fairly straightforward adoption of a new protocol. I think through the work that's been done with our government inspectors, we've decided to fine-tune our councillor staff interaction protocol in order to transact smooth communication between both parties, and that's obviously to the benefit of the community. So I don't have anything further to add except to say that it's something that all councillors agree to this process.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor
Mr Mayor, I'm happy to second it with an additional point, if I may, and if it's agreeable to the mover. Point 3, that the policy be reviewed on a yearly basis.
Yes.
I think every policy needs that.
I think we need to do it anyhow. So
yeah, that's just the standard, so I didn't think it would be problematic.
It's okay. Go for it. Include that. Yep.
Yep.
There's
nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I'll put that to a vote. There's no further discussion. All those in favour? And that's carried. Next item was the 6.9.
Happy to move that, Mr Mayor.
Move Councillor Vella, second Councillor Williams. Councillor Vella.
Well, this is just a report. This is the recommendation is a report from the Councillor Conduct Panel in relation to an application for misconduct put forward by Councillor Williams against myself, and the report. The determination is that that it was dismissed. There was no misconduct.
Thank you, Councillor Vella. Councillor Williams.
Look, the only way that I felt that I could resolve the issue, and more importantly was to include my name, was that I was to go through the code of conduct to ensure my integrity and character did not suffer as a result of Councillor Vella's actions. I'm actually satisfied with the process, and the panel has suggested, outlined in point 24 of the findings, that all of us need to follow processes. And I'm also pleased that in point 20, the panel gave an explanation to the matter, that there was no evidence to say that I did anything wrong. By bringing this action to Code of Conduct panel, all councillors need to be wary, and for this type of action not to reoccur in future, it's really important that we follow the Darebin Code of Conduct guidelines first to actually ensure that we do have good governance here in Darebin.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further comments, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against?
I'm abstaining.
Councillor Lawrence is abstaining, so we'll count that as a no. Okay, that concludes our consideration reports. We now go to consideration of responses to notices of motion and general business with 7.1, Pokies in Darebin, electronic gaming machine policy for 2016-19. Councillor Lee?
Yes, thank
I'm
you,
happy to second.
Let's hear it first.
Yes, I actually got a motion for deferral upon further consultation with our senior officers this morning, and I've circulated the motion for deferral. Essentially, for this report and recommendation to defer defer to end of March, not to by. Just a small typo there. Pending council briefing on feasibility of including two new clauses, banning new pokies application on all council-owned land, and also banning the expansion of pokie applications on all council-owned land, not and on all council-owned land.
So, Councillor Lee moves. Seconder?
I'm happy to second with a slight amendment.
Okay, Councillor Greco, do you want to add your amendment now, please?
I've circulated this previously. It would be basically to add a third point to the deferral, and the third point relates to council receiving a report regarding the integration of an EGM policy into council's land use strategies. For council to consider that, how to integrate the policy, the gaming policy, into our planning scheme, basically.
Into the Darabin planning scheme.
Have you got that?
I circulated the exact wording today, so
we'll just wait for the minute.
I just gave a quick summary of what the.
Won't be the next council meeting, no. 7th of March.
Or when the rest comes, like it's been deferred to the end of March, so it can come together with that. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Third point for deferral.
Mover's happy with that. Okay.
Happy with that.
Would you like to speak to it,
just
Councillor?
very briefly. Look, the stats in pokies in Darabin is well known. I'm certainly have been speaking on it on many occasions. This report actually responds to a motion that I put forth to the council at the end of last year regarding the Enough Pokies campaign. The stats are fairly alarming, and I think most councillors are very much aware of this. We lose on average 23% more than the metro average, to the order of $80 million in 2012-2013. To put that into perspective, that's about 80% of our race revenue. So I think that's a lot of money in our community that's been bled out of our community that could be used for other purposes in our local businesses and our local cafes and shops and hairdressers and so forth. The reason why I want to defer this is under the clause 4.2, page 6 of our new policy, it says we should discourage pokies in council-owned land. While I understand that we do have clubs already operating pokies on existing council-owned land, I certainly don't want any further expansion of that. I think we as a council should send a very strong signal to the community that we should not support machines that bleed money out of our community. And I think if we can ban new pokie applications on council-owned land, or a way of banning expansion of pokie applications on council-owned land, is our contribution to minimise the harm of pokies in our community. And I'll leave the third point to Councillor Greco because I understand he has some particular concerns about the planning scheme. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Seconder, wish to speak, Councillor Greco?
I'll just speak in relation to the third point, and Councillor Lee's covered it fairly well in terms of the deferment. My third point there, what it refers to is actually receiving a report on how we can integrate the gaming policy into our planning scheme. And this has been done by other councils. I would say it's the benchmark in relation to gaming policies. It's been done by Monash Council, where they've actually incorporated their gaming policy inside their planning scheme. Why have they done that? The importance of that is that we can have all the policies that we want, but we know that the state government are the ones that pull the strings in relation to gaming. The only means that we have where we can put some teeth, if you like, into our gaming policy, if it is part of our planning scheme. And that's what I'm seeking, that the officers come back to us to see how quickly we can do that, because until we have that, we've basically just got words on paper, and it's very difficult then to control the extent of of gaming in our city. And I believe that if we were able to put it inside the planning scheme, it would actually give teeth, or better teeth, to our gaming policy.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor McCarthy?
Just ask a question in relation to point 3. Councillor Greco has referred to a report and a briefing in the same point. I'm just wondering, is it a further report to a council meeting on the process and costs, or is it a briefing? Because one doesn't necessarily lead to action.
Could you repeat that?
So I'm just wondering, in point 3, Councillor Greco has referred to receiving a report in the third line, but in the first line it's referred to a briefing. I'm wondering, to be consistent, is it to receive a report? So is Council receiving a report?
Yes.
Yes.
So change the word briefing
The word
to
briefing
report.
should be report.
First sentence.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, if there's no further comments from councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That item is carried.
Call for division.
Division called by Councillor Lees. Those in favour of the recommendation, please stand up. I name Councillor Lee, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Williams, Councillor Cetus, Councillor Fontana, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Greco, Councillor Bello. Those against, please stand up and name Councillor Walsh. Thank you. Next item is 7.2, car and pedestrian safety management on Cheddar Road. We have a recommendation there. Move Councillor Villalon, second up. Councillor Greco. Councillor Villalon.
Look, just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, this is a response to a report which is a response to a resolution of council that asked for a report regarding the reducing the speed limit along Cheddar Road, and also looking at the pedestrian points across Cheddar Road. Those of us familiar with that area know that it is a heavily trafficked area. There needs to be, I asked for a review to see whether there could be some traffic modification and pedestrian modification. The recommendation, after some analysis, is that the recommendation is to apply to Vic roads to reduce Cheddar Road speed limit from 60 to 50. I think we've seen already in Reservoir along Massey Avenue, for example, and Broadhurst, there's been a reduction from the 50 to 60, and I think it's made a considerable difference, very positive difference. And I think Cheddar Road, it would not be unreasonable to also look at reduction in the speed limit along there to manage the traffic flow. Also, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation suggests point 2, that if we're successful in reducing the speed limit to 50, we would seek approval from Vic Roads to upgrade the existing school crossing on Cheddar Road near Hickford Street to a zebra crossing. The report indicates that there's support for this, but it's contingent on a 50-kilometre speed limit. So I think that whole area, especially with there's more activity happening in that area, as we know, Mr. Mayor, and a number of residents have said that crossing needs to be addressed. And there would also be, as part of the recommendation, ongoing monitoring of that area if there is a need for additional pedestrian points from Cheddar Road to the median strip, let's say. Now, the report says that it's not warranted just yet, but there will be ongoing monitoring. But I would anticipate, Mr. Mayor, as has been the case, over the last 5 years, there's been increased pedestrian along that median strip, with people cycling and walking. So I welcome the ongoing monitoring, but I would anticipate that with the additional beautification of that strip, and we will be getting more human traffic along there as well. So, but I think the monitoring in the first instance is a good start. So I welcome the report and I look forward to whatever progress we can make. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lower. Councillor Greco?
Nothing further.
I'll just make a comment here that, if Cheddar Road is reduced from 60 to 50, it'll be we won't have any roads under our control which have 60k zones. Okay, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. That concludes our responses to notices of motion. We now go to notices of motion 8.1. conduct of the 2006 local government elections. Councillor McCarthy.
Mr Mayor, as flagged with you earlier today, I will withdraw this notice of motion.
Thank you.
I have put forward an alternative version of this notice of motion which can be considered at the next council meeting, which supersedes
yes.
this. So
okay. Thanks, Councillor
on that basis, I'll withdraw that one.
Okay. We now go to urgent business. We've dealt with urgent business already. Mr CEO, do we have any other urgent business items?
None tonight.
None. Okay, thank you for that. General business items. Do we have any general business items submitted for tonight?
It's nil.
0 as well.
Wow.
Okay, moving along. Councillors, we now go to item 11, reports of standing committees. We have 11.1, the Audit Committee. We have a recommendation there.
Happy to move.
Move, Councillor Walsh. We have a seconder.
Happy to second.
Second, Councillor McCarthy. If there's no comment, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That item is carried. Next item is a record of assemblies of councillors. Assembly of councillors held.
Happy to second.
Moved Councillor Greco, seconded Councillor McCarthy. I'll note too that councillors' reports will appear in the minutes of council meetings once they're completed. I understand that the minutes of this meeting will be made available on Monday the 8th of Feb. So council reports will actually appear in the minutes of council meetings. Councillor Walsh.
Mr Mayor, I have something to table, which I'd like to table.
Let me put that to a vote first, Councillor Walsh. I haven't put the item to a vote yet.
We're dealing with item.
Is this table?
What is it?
Yeah, it's a table.
Application.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, with the vote. We're doing 12.1. 12.1. That's got to go to the bottom. Yeah. So if you just hold your horses there, Councillor Walsh, I've got to put 12.1 to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Reports by me. I beg your pardon, I've made an error there. Assembly of Councillors held. I'll do that again. Item 12, records of assemblies of councillors. Moved Councillor McCarthy, and I think the second was Councillor Walsh. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. My apologies for that. Now we'll go to reports by mayors and councillors. Reports have been circulated to all councillors here this evening. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have one thing I will add. It wasn't really appropriate to put in the report, but I would like to mention it anyway. Whilst I was on a personal trip over in Western Australia, I was staying with a family friend who works in the energy sector and the solar industry, and she had heard about Darebin Solar Savers scheme, and it was certainly talked about. It had certainly been talked about over there in Western Australia. So Darebin's making it big in the West.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Thank you. Walsh. Councillor Williams.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, but due to technical issues regarding my computer, I was unable to forward.
You can lodge it at the next meeting. Include it then, Councillor Williams. Okay.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
And also,
so Councillor Walsh has moved. We have a seconder for that. Councillor McCarthy. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried.
And I would also seek leave to table a petition.
Okay, Councillor Walsh.
Happy to second.
Seconded Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Walsh.
And it's just in relation, and thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McCarthy, for seconding it. It's just in relation to the St George's Road avenue of trees, and it wasn't able to be, it wasn't ready to be properly tabled at the time that we were discussing this tonight, unfortunately. So I tabled this. I've tabled this now, and there are copies here for all councillors and our CEO as well.
Just before Councillor Walsh finishes, is it possible for the copies to be circulated so that we know
that is the idea. That is the idea. Yes, we see beforehand, Councillor Walsh. So if you can circulate them first, have a nice officer circulate them for you, please, Councillor Walsh. Give them the. Okay, so we've had Oliver Walsh, Councillor Walsh, table the accepting of petition, moved seconded by Councillor McCarthy. We'll now go to a vote on that to actually accept the content of the petition.
So it's moved by
yourself
and seconded by Councillor McCarthy.
So I'll put that to a vote again. All those in favour? That's carried.
Unanimously?
Unanimously.
Yep.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Walsh. So the petition's been received. Have it come back to a meeting in March. Is that okay with you, Councillor Walsh?
Yep.
Early March?
Yes, that would be good.
Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move along there. Any other petitions? Need a vote on that too, that the petition comes to another meeting in March. First meeting in March, I'll put that to a vote. Second to Councillor McCarthy, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Right. Any other petitions from councillors?
No, nothing.
If not, that concludes our items for this evening. We now go to item 14, consideration of reports confidential. Can I ask the gallery to vacate the chambers, please, and join us for refreshments in a little while in the function room to the rear. Councillor Sears?
Move to go into camera.
Seconded.
Second.
Councillor Lyons, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's carried. We'll just wait for the gallery to vacate.